Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. I'm Olga Mack, CEO of Parley Pro. I love interviewing the folks who practice in-house. I especially love people in-house who do exciting things with technology. And today we'll be talking about this one amazing disruptive technology called AI. And my guest has an opinion and a message, and she will share it. And also, as you know, the guests on my show have been nominated by you. So do that again. Go ahead, put in a comment and nominate another person who is practicing in-house, who is lawyer or maybe not, who is contributing to legal function all day, every day, who has an opinion about career, practice of law, their community, or anything else, because we know for sure that in-house lawyers and in-house professionals are human first, and they have all kinds of life and interests that are worth sharing. So with that in mind, I will have my guest say hello. Hi, Wei. Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, Olga. Hello, guests. Thanks so much for inviting me to the show. So my name is Wei Chen. I'm a practicing attorney for over 20 years here in the U.S. I was born and grew up in China. Got a legal degree in China as well, and came here to the States, went to a law school and get another JD. So that's why I spent 12 years in college. Just, if you have trouble, finding, your kids not getting motivated, like, look at me. Hey, the girl who spent 12 years in college.
12 years in college is great. I just love it. You are well educated. That's great.
Yeah. So I started my legal career at Skadden Arps in Chicago. I was a summer associate there doing mostly corporate security and M&A work. And then subsequently, I've spent time at Cooley Godward in Palo Alto, and then in-house at Sun Microsystems, and now at Salesforce. 2 years ago, Olga, that you probably remember, I had so many conversations with you about this.
Yeah, I was about to ask, you are a very accomplished lawyer. You're a remarkable human being. Every time I talk to you, I get inspired. I think of something exciting. It really motivates me. You've been someone who really, I've had conversation throughout my career. As a tech lawyer, as a woman leader, I really value this friendship. You founded this thing called the Atticus Project. And when you told me the first time, I had a girl crush. So
oh, thank you. I have to say, back then, 3 years ago, I have to say, Wayne said, oh, we're going to talk about this exciting concept called artificial intelligence. And in my mind, I'm like, artificial intelligence, that's so 2010. Last time, when I was looking at the Gartner hype, cycle, and AI is not even on there anymore. It's quantum computing and all of the other good stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about the hype cycle. It keeps on moving. So tell us more about the Atticus Project. What is it, and how does an in-house lawyer get up in the morning and want to do something like that?
Yeah. And okay, you have witnessed this whole journey and struggle, of me for the past 3 years. So about 3 years ago, I finally, after practicing M&A for, 17, 18 years, and I suddenly realized that, hey, maybe, all this groundwork of reviewing thousands and pages of legal contracts is something that, we could leverage a tool to do it faster and do it better. And my husband is an AI researcher at a big company, and he, was doing all this, these educations for me about how AI is capable of reading and understanding just normal language, right? If you do a Google search and you say, hey, what is Shakespeare's birthday? And they would just immediately come up with the right answer. And I was like, if that's the case, maybe, if I feed a contract into an AI tool, the AI tool would immediately tell me that, hey, what is the start date? What is the end date of this contract? And what are this contract has a non-compete? Does it have a, change of control provision? Wouldn't that be nice, Olga?
That would be nice. As someone who led companies through acquisition more than once and had to endure through this, part of due diligence. Yeah, I can say that would have been helpful. So what happened then? You have this moment. And, I think at various parts of our careers, we all have moments where there's a better way. There must be a better way. Yeah. So you have this moment, but you did more than that. You had more than a realization. You actually acted on it.
Yeah, because back then, the ignorant myself was so naive, right? I was like, if that's the case, let me get a couple of vendors, because they all told me that their AI tools can do this. And so I got two AI tools in-house and started experimenting with it. And then I was told that actually, in order for the AI to work, I have to teach the AI. And then how do I teach the AI? I have to first of all, review and so-called label, meaning that, I take out a highlighter, in my literal sense, and then just mark the contracts with what is the start date, and I give it an answer, and then I mark another clause and give it an answer. And then I need to do at least 50 examples of each clauses before the AI can become, a little bit more intelligent. So I did that. I did that. A bit more. Yeah, I did that. And that took me a long time. And then I feed it another contract, and they stopped working because the contract I feed it into it are, they're somewhat similar, because at the end of the day, I'm only working for one type of business, which is, SaaS software subscription business. So I'm like, hey, this is not something that I myself should do on my own. I need to get some of my friends. And I called you, and I called other people, from my counterparts at other big companies. And then all of us are getting excited. And we were like, oh yeah, let's do this. It will be a 6-month thing. Each one of us will just spend the weekends, highlight contracts. And then after 6 months, we'll be done.
I'm going to highlight two lessons in this story. Sometimes waking up in the morning and not have done it before and being ignorant about what it takes is actually a blessing. There's a lot of that I started. If I had a full disclosure, I would have never started. No. And the other thing I think here is, hey, it really helps to have geeky friends. Yeah, let's meet up on Sunday and do contract. Yeah. That's my tribe.
Yes. And then 6 months after, actually a year after, take a guess how many contracts I got labeled.
Oh, I don't know. You're an overachiever, so I will say
5. And 4 of those are from me. I'm like, this is not working. This is not working. Let me think of a different way. And during those 1 year of just constantly trying to pivot and trying to figure out, how to create this label set of contracts, so this 50 each, it took a long time, and I took a lot of wrong turns. But eventually, one day I was talking with Adam Sterling, the executive director of Berkeley Center for Law and Business. And he was like, hey, this would be a great education opportunity for our law students. Why don't you just, I can send you a couple of law students and we can have the attorneys supervise them. I was like,
Adam is full of great ideas. Shout out to Adam. Adam is a really good friend. And yes, I'm only biased because I went to Berkeley twice. So go Bears. But I love that idea. So did you actually do it?
I did. And so fast forward to today, I have worked with over 100 law students. For the past 2 years, we've hosted this year-long program divided into spring, summer, and fall. And we had law students not only from Berkeley, but also from Stanford, Georgetown, London, Prague, France, anywhere that you can think of, essentially participating in our program.
Oh, I just love it. So tell us where you are. And then I do want to kind of get to where the opportunities are. But tell us where you are with the Atticus Project, where you've been, where you are, and where you're going, so folks can be situated. And then we'll talk about opportunities in AI and law.
Yeah. So I'm going to put it in very simple terms. So we open source, which means, we made it publicly available for free 510 contracts. And these contracts are extracted from Edgar, which is a publicly available website hosted by the SEC. And these are contracts filed by these publicly traded companies that are considered either immaterial or require under securities law. So we use these contracts and we, took out our electronic highlighter and highlight all of the provision, give it an answer. And there is approximately 130,000 of these annotations. And we published that. And then we also worked with the Berkeley researchers to assess like the performance of the existing state-of-art AI models against it. And I can share the performance results in the link as well. And then we're also in the process of creating a merger agreement. So that the first data set was the commercial contracts data set. And this data set that we're publishing later this year is the merger agreement.
Okay. Oh, really cool. So let me ask you a few follow-up questions. One question is around sort of the open sourceness of it, and you specify that it's not just open source, it's also free, right? Yeah. Not everything that is open source is actually free. So help me understand, what are you trying to accomplish with not just opening sourcing it, but making it available to everyone who needs it?
Yeah. So first of all, what we really need is the general collaboration with the AI community. And the AI community, the best and the brightest AI developers are in high demand. Anything any company does nowadays probably need one or two, or if not, hundreds of AI developers. So how do you attract these people to work on, a problem, that's not curing cancer or reducing carbon emissions, who wants to help lawyers, save more time?
Look, I have a really strong point of view that civil society is important, and the law has a huge place in that. Yes. But I can see, as someone who also cares about, disease and environment, I can see how that may be a little lower on the priority list sometimes. However, our relationship with law is dysfunctional, and it needs to be cured at some point.
Yes, it needs to be cured. I 100% agree with that. I like that analogy. So with that, the AI developers do work with open source data sets from time to time, either as a hobby or to demonstrate, to compete. There's this thing called a competition where you can go a Kaggle competition or some of the leaderboard where you can demonstrate how good you are by working with a new data set. And I figure legal contracts is, because there aren't a lot of it, right? So there is a lot of low hanging fruits. Maybe if I get some legal data sets out there, I will attract some talents to come here and work on this for free. So this is the first, reason for doing this for free is really just to meet the developers where they are. They wanted to have open, they wanted to have free, they wanted to work with things that's in CSV, in JSON. That's where we need to be. So that's one. Secondly, I'm taking it from the community for free, right? So this data set that we created for Quad, for the commercial contracts, if we calculate it using an average $500 an hour, for that data set itself would be $2 million, right? No one is going to be able to afford that, and it's such a small size data set. So no one is going to be able to afford that. So I was fortunate enough to, Atticus is fortunate enough to have this ecosystem of volunteers who are willing to help with this initiative, and they're all doing it for free. So what I take for free, I need to give it back for free. So that's the two reasons why we're open sourcing it. I
love your focus on sort of greater good and being service oriented. I just think it's very important. As I said, I value civil society. I think law has a huge part in it. I guess for further context, I grew up in a society that may not value that as much. So I really inherently understand the huge difference and value it a lot. You mentioned a couple of things. As a CEO of a tech company who's always on the hunt of the top talent, I joke that I only hire ninjas. This concept of meeting people where they are is very, very important. And in your case, you're not just looking for tech talent. You're also looking for legal talent, and amazing legal talent also has options in life. Whether they're just from in law school, anywhere in their career, really. And so what's in it there for them? Why do they show up?
Yeah. I'm fortunate enough to attract lots of ninjas, right? The ninjas who already have like law firm offers, but they know that, once they go into a law firm, they would have no idea. Because law school really don't teach you these practical skills, not to say like, I have any problem with the law school curriculum, but, legal profession is apprenticeship. Right, to date there hasn't been, as far as I know, that like a textbook that teach you how to read legal contracts, or like a set of like terms, like here are what the terms of a contract should contain, and here are some examples of that. Like there's just no systematic textbook or trainings like that. So our students are really looking for that, rare opportunity they wouldn't get in the law school, where it would be hugely advantage to them once they learn all of those things and start working. They felt like their confidence is up, like they understand the basic concepts, and that's like hugely important. Giving them a leg up when they start practicing.
Yeah, I am with you that to attract ninjas, you need to show value, in learning, in contribution to the community for the greater good. Because, in the end, it is, yes, at some point, you make enough money, or, there are other things that make ninjas get up in the morning and want to show up.
Yeah, you're talking about the first world problem that maybe you have, but the law students, yeah, like I think one of the secret desire that they have is they don't want to do these like mind numbing, like contract review work, or like typing in the disclosure schedules, like all of these things that could be automated. So maybe by participating in Atticus Project, they were hoping that they could make that automated future a little bit faster.
You mentioned another thing. You mentioned Edgar. And Edgar is a SEC database. Some say is good enough. Some say that could be more friendly, and various services provide an improved version of it. It has a lot of filings, K and Q's filings, the annual and quarterly filings for all public companies, and other things. And sometimes, they have attachment as contracts that are material to that business. I'm a fan of Edgar. I've been searching that website for a very long time. I wish it was getting better sooner. But that aside, when you look at the contracts there, we are talking about like top 1% outlier contracts. We are not talking about the contracts that I did as a general counsel on my team all day, every day. Those are very special, unique snowflakes. Yep. So I'm just curious how you think about this data set, and how important is the data set? How do you make sure it's a well-rounded? Because in the end, if what you're trying to is open source something useful in contracts, across industries, the outlier contracts are great, but I'm just curious how that generalizes on everything else.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I have to say the data set is not perfect. It is biased, and in the data sheet that we created, we made it very clear that that one of the bias of this data set is the snowflakes. It's the top 1%, highly negotiated, very nuanced contracts. But it has two advantages, like no other data set potentially is going to have. One is the variety, right? Like if you take the software subscription agreement, that you scrub on the web, first of all, there's legal issues of whether we have the right to use it. But more importantly, it's like they're fairly consistent. As you know that we all take a template from one another from time to time, and that drives certain behavior where if you have your data set learn on all of those contracts, and then it would be completely useless when you get agriculture or biopharmaceutical contracts that you want AI to read, understand. So that's one. And then two, it's public, right? It's public. One of the challenges of a legal data set is, by definition, legal contracts, like 99% of them are proprietary and confidential, right? So we have to start somewhere. And then if we have a public data set, even though that is biased, we have to start from there.
Yeah, there is definitely what I call a black box problems when it comes to anything legal and AI. These documents are not designed to be viewed by public. They're not designed to be disclosed. They're just not designed to be produced. They're designed to be guarded and hidden and in the vault. And it is a little bit off trend, just kind of technologically, historically speaking, because the trend toward transparency and kind of visibility. So we are almost toward the end. I have a few questions. Specifically, I want to talk about sort of, what challenges you face. What is and by you, I mean we really, as a profession that can greatly benefit from amazing tools and disruptive technologies like AI and many others. In this specific context, what is sort of the biggest challenge, and what we can do to address them?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the main message I wanted to get through, as part of this podcast. It's the fact that, there is a dirty secret to modern day AI technology. And sometimes you hear deep learning or neural network. It just requires massive amount of training data set. And that's a secret that no one talks about. Right, unlike the technologies of the 2000, right, or the 1900, it is like Word or like Delta View or like electronic data room, that all of us immediately embraced when they first came, or email, immediately embraced when they first dropped on our laps, right? We didn't know that, someone was working on that. It came to us. It works immediately, right? And satisfy our needs, and we start using it. AI is not going to be the same. So the secret to modern day AI development is it needs a training data set. And I use the example of the bar exam, right? So if I give you a whole bunch of bar exam without an answer key and practice questions with the answer key and explanations, are you going to perform better, right? Next time? Of course not. So what lawyers are creating, what the Atticus Project is creating, is this answer key to your bar exam. And in order for the AI to pass, we have to give the answer key. And this creating the answer key process is a very labor intensive process. I initially thought it's 6 months. It turned out that it's probably going to be a 10-year job. So I don't want people to get too optimistic and too passive by just sitting in their sofa and thinking that, AI is going to solve this problem on their own without our involvement or contribution. That is absolutely not true. We need to start contributing and started, telling the AI what we're looking for and give the, guidance in terms of a number of things, what are the different terms that we're looking for? There was this example, Olga, I got 7 attorneys to come to an expert piano to talk about limitation on liabilities. And at the end of the day, I got 7.
I mean, come on, limit of liabilities where the actions is. I mean, it's not a small thing; it's the thing. But sure, yes. And
I said, and I told everyone, I was like, then at the end of the day, I got 6 different answers, and then the other people will be like, oh, I'm surprised it's not 10. There's no consistent characterization of the different ways that you talk about limitation and liability. Some people look at it from the lens of direct, indirect. Some people from the lens of cap on cap. Some people from, consequential versus, I mean, it's all over the place. And, that's something that we need to tackle. Huge problem, right? The second problem is it's just requires so much data. Some people told me that, it's 50. It turned out that it's at least thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. I've even heard of millions. How is it possible that, for human attorneys, like who are already resource strains like we are, to highlight like millions of contracts? It's just not possible. Yeah. So we're not there yet. Like, I really, this is a call for action. We need all of you. In order for the AI to be better in legal contracts, we need everyone.
So my favorite part when I used to negotiate, every contract when I was a mid-level lawyer, people was like, "Oh, we're almost there. We just have a little bit of liability left." Oh, great. Okay, we're basically just starting here. I hear you when you say that, there's kind of two things needed. There needs to be data, the actual contracts. And all of us at some point needs to think, do we want to be contributors to that? And two, all of us probably need to pitch in. And if we want the data set to reflect the sort of current practices. I hear that call for action loud and clear, and I hope the audience does as well, because data is super important, and your AI is going to be only as smart as the input you give, both in actual contracts and in your intelligence, because your AI is not going to be any more intelligent than you unless you train it. We're almost at the end. I do want to talk a little bit about adoption, because there's a problem of creation, and you outlined the opportunities there. But there is also a problem of adoption, because, as you said, our profession is all about apprenticeship. If you actually ask people, and I have done this before, to explain to me how they can conceptually think about a limit of liability, they think of it in different ways, and they connect it to different. There's sort of, I would say, at least 3 to 5 schools of thought that I've seen that sort of dominate my negotiations. So that just means to me that we're, as a profession, we have more than one approach. We're somewhat conflicted on some things. There is no necessarily one best practice. So, and as a result, lawyers are asking, the AI that you're putting in front of me, is it going to be doing what I expect it to do or not? And then that and many other reasons leads to reservation about adoptions. What have you seen about adoption? What have you seen from your peers, from fellow lawyers, when it comes to AI adoption?
Adoption of using AI for legal contract review or legal contract drafting is very, very low. And I don't blame anyone who do not use it. I don't use it in my day-to-day job yet. And the reason is not because, there's this misconception of like, hey, we're on billable hours. Like people don't want to, like automation. They don't want, other people, the AI to take over their job. I truly do not believe that's the reason. The reason is the low accuracy. The reason why I can't use AI is because whatever the AI does, I can't trust it. I have to do it in my old fashioned, just on the side, print it out, doing the real highlighter. And then I have to do it on the AI. So there's this parallel system going on, especially in the M&A world, like I am in. You don't have time. You don't have time for that, right? The fundamental problem that we need to solve together is to increase the accuracy. Once the accuracy gets to somewhere between 70 to 80%, you will see this massive adoption across the legal industry. And I know that will happen, in the next 2-3 years. And I know Atticus would be leading that change and trying to create more and more data sets and trying to increase the accuracy of AI. And then the AI model, in the meantime, that they will continue to increase in accuracy as well. But they can't do it on their own. And then the return on investment in investing in data is equivalent. So we did this experiment. We had the AI researcher at Berkeley run this experiment of using the Atticus, the 150 contracts through the AI model. And it generates the same result as you increase the AI model by 10 times, right? We're talking about tens of millions of dollars, 3 years of, software development versus, some 20 law students under, a few part-time attorneys, volunteer time. The return on investment is the same. So, if you wanted to, I joke because my husband is an AI developer. I'm a lawyer. I was like, hey guys, like, my kids, hey, if you want to invest your money, who do you want to invest in? Data versus AI. I'm going to pass on an unsolicited business, tip, for you guys, if you're thinking about entrepreneurship or like the future. There will be, in 2 years or 5 years, there will be a need for people to pay for a high quality training data set because they got the AI model and the AI model works, right? To 60%, let's say. And then if you buy another high quality training data set, your AI is performed at 80%. And the rest of the people who don't have that data set is going to perform at 60%. So, just, you're welcome.
Yeah, I love that. Look, this has been a great conversation, and I am with you, especially in house. It is not about billable hours, and we all want to give better advice faster. So that's not the reason. That's not billable hours in house. Definitely not in house. Law firm, I'm less kind of familiar with that. Maybe to some extent, but I do think with you, this accuracy, does it actually, is the output where I would like it to be? It's more than accuracy, right? Does it follow the way I think is the right way to practice law? That's a sort of second order thinking. Can I stand behind that legal advice, right? Because with that's kind of what I'm thinking when I give legal advice, and if I rely on automation, that it's accuracy first, and then is it aligned with the way with our goals, my company goals, the way I practice law, the way I mitigate risk, because it's that and more. So
absolutely.
Really great conversation, Wei. I'm so glad you joined, and I always learn so much from you, and you enlighten me with every word. I really love this conversation. I want to make sure you give, a takeaway to the listeners. Please share some takeaways. How can people help you? How can we all work together to get to a state of AI that will make us more effective in house?
Yeah. So the first thing first is, understand the secret of modern day AI. It requires training data set, which means that lawyers needs to take the time and mark up the documents using a electronic yellow highlighter on the contracts to train it. And that work can only be done by lawyers. So this is not like Word and email where you can just sit and enjoy, right? This is really something that, if we don't act, we'll never get it. So secondly, where to start? Be transparent. I understand that, legal contracts and legal community has this tendency of being a closed community, but this is a opportunity for us to use the publicly available data set, which is Edgar, and then just, start talking about being transparent about the different ways that we interpret contracts. Once I'm transparent and I say, hey, this is the way I look at things, I look at limitation on liability, I look at it from a direct versus indirect perspective. And then Olga can come in and then you'll say, no, I look at it from a capped on liability versus uncapped liability. Both answers are right. And then we put both side by side, and then, we have different theories, but, there needs to be some transparency for us to move the industry forward.
Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, Wei. I thoroughly enjoyed it. As I mentioned before, these conversations are influenced and suggested by you. So if you have someone that you think could enlighten all of us, whether it comes to technology, personal development, career aspirations, community service, all kinds of things, because we know that in-house lawyers are well-rounded humans first. Let me know who that person should join me for the conversation. I am really here on the mission to show that in-house lawyers contribute quite a lot and they're humans first. And there's a way for them to show up fully and be builders and contributors. So definitely let me know. And thank you so much for joining. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and look forward to hearing from all of you. Bye, everyone.